my little prompting. If you don't have it, Rhonda Ray can show her family there. We appreciate having Miss Brooklyn and Miss Madison with us. Bless their hearts, made it in. We thank the Lord safely. Yesterday we met them at Nick's Creek because that last little drag here, losing cell service and whatever. But you pray for them because they're staying with us. Bless their heart. This morning when Sister Debbie mentioned zucchini, I noticed little Madison sitting over there grinning. They will not look at zucchini the same after watching me cook last night. Bless their hearts. I muscled through it though, didn't I, girls? I didn't waste all of it. I over-seasoned my zucchini. If you want to look, this verse that I will read the verse. Obviously, I will not talk about it in the context that seasoned, experienced individuals that have different callings would talk about it. I'm going to actually. It's Revelation 17:2. I heard a minister use this verse, and I actually heard this verse. It was during a live feed came up. We knew this this minister had service at a specific time, and we thought, oh, we'll watch him, and they're a small congregation like us, and I thought, oh, we'll watch it. But for some reason, we wondered if it wasn't even live that night. But then it popped up later. So in the process of watching kind of the end of what that minister was presenting, that brother, he used this verse. And he used it during his live feed, and I enjoyed how he discussed a specific part of it in Revelation 17:2. With whom the kings of the earth have committed fornication, and the inhabitants of the earth have been made drunk with the wine of her fornication. Now, he talked about it, obviously, as it applies in a typical fashion you hear it preached about. Okay, he really did. But the way he discussed the concept of drunkenness in relation to how that scripture represents people in today's world and religious movements and religious affiliation, how it applies to today's world and their involvement, people's involvement with religion, was very interesting. And as I reflected on his lesson, I had a thought pop in my head, and it was on the concept of drunkenness. And actually, I reached out to this person in a very, very quick, it was just a very brief, quick text exchange. He was kind and encouraging in his reply back to me, but we had a very brief exchange. But a thought that came to me became a guiding force for today's lesson. And I was thinking, because he talked about that concept, drunkenness, attributes of people being, drunk on false religion, etc. But from time to time, I guess my brain took the thought, well, you can become intoxicated with lots of things. So I will not obviously use that verse in the way that he necessarily discussed it in his message, but to take from the concept becoming intoxicated with something. Certainly people can become intoxicated with false belief systems. They can get themselves wrapped up in all kinds of stuff, and they become delusional. They become disillusioned with what maybe even things they've heard in their past. They get very confused. But from time to time, you run into situations and you hear people discuss their past. And I thought, it is good that we reflect on our past. It is good that we do it with the right attitude, because our past can help us in the present, and it can inform how we move forward for our future, because hopefully we learn from the past, don't we? I thought about my personal past. Just to share a little bit, my wife has teased me not really teased me, but she's mentioned in the past, you don't talk about your childhood. And we were with Brother Mark and Sister Tammy in Indiana, and it was so funny. Stuff popped in my head. Brother Mark laughed at me, Sister Tammy, but I'd forgotten stuff. I had a little random memory. I was a unique child. No one say, I'm sure. My mom had 5 very different children, and God bless her, she had me. I don't know. She probably thought, where did he come from? I was different than my siblings, and I had a very random memory. Now, this is from my past. I don't often discuss my childhood. And Brother Mark got so I get tickled thinking about how he laughed at this. But this is true. I was very young, and I have always been part of my past story It's okay for me to be thankful for it. But I've always been raised in a church like this. This was part of my raising. It's my background and part of who I am. It's okay for me to be thankful for that, but I also want to be cautious that I don't have a boastful attitude about my upbringing. So when I was a kid, we had this fireplace. Now, Austin has that fireplace. And on this fireplace, I was a very imaginative kid. I'm a very imaginative adult. I get lost in thought. When I read a book, oh my goodness, I'm something else. But I would stand on the little part of the fireplace that jutted out. And Brother Mark's laugh. And I'd take some blanket, I don't know. And keep in mind, I was born so late in my family. I was not an only child, but kind of an only child, if that makes sense. And my niece grew up with me. So my niece was more like my sibling. It's because she spent a lot of time with us. My mom kept her while her mom and dad worked. So she was there with me. Well, I would get on the little ledge of the fireplace. This story has nothing to do with my lesson, but just a glimpse into my childhood. Well, I had been raised in this belief system, and it was instilled in me, you don't lie. Lying is wrong. I mean, I hope most parents tell their children that. But then again, you have me, who was a very unique child, to say the least. And I would wrap this thing around my neck because I loved superheroes. I still kind of like stuff like that in general. I always loved superheroes. So I would stand on, now here I am, a little child. This is an early memory. I don't know how old I was. And I would stand up there because I wanted to fly. But I didn't want to lie. And I knew God, I had been taught God's always listening. So I would stand on the fireplace. Here I am, a little child with my blanket. God, I'm not lying, I'm just pretending. Now, God did not need me to do that. But that's how my young mind interpreted my raising. That's how my young mind was dealing with things I was being presented, obviously. I don't know that my mom overheard me. She probably thought, I don't even want to go in there. That poor woman, I questioned her to death. Poor old woman, in her old age, bore this. But, and I was thinking about my past, and I was thinking about in light of what this brother presented, I can be thankful for things of the past. And it doesn't have to be just upbringing. We can be thankful. All of us have things from our past we may be thankful for. But a thought hit me. My past doesn't matter if I'm not representing truth very well in the present. I can't be boastful and proud of something in the past if I'm not applying it well today, can I? Because what good is it doing? What good does a championship won by a team in 1993 matter today? It probably doesn't, does it? That's in the past. That past glory is gone. And so I shared with the minister in a quick text exchange my personal reflection from his message. And I think this was straight from literally what I wrote. This was me. We all get something different when we listen to a message or a lesson, I'm sure. And for me, this is something that I took away. I'm just in the kitchen at random doing things, and this thought struck me. People do not care about your past experiences and how you were brought up if you do not make what you learned and what you were taught appealing in the present. It doesn't matter what my mama instilled in me if I don't act like it matters today. The way I present it today is what's going to make an impact in my present. My past is gone. My past, that's history. And I put, people that I encounter today, they go off of what they feel and experience from my upbringing. No, they go off of what they experience now. And I thought about how that minister did such an eloquent job talking about that concept of people being drunk, or if we could even say intoxicated as a synonym. And I thought, I cannot be drunk on the past expecting it to solely influence my present and my future. That's irrelevant now in some ways. It can inform my present. It's built who I am. It can inform my future. But if I'm drunk on everything from the past and that's all I can think or revel about, I could die in the present. There are people, and I'm thinking about this, there are people who may have not have had the particular experiences I had when I was young, or the upbringing, the exposure, whatever you want to call it, whatever word or phrase you want to use. They may not have had what I did, But you know what? They may be doing leaps and bounds more than I am in the present. Because what matters is the now, isn't it? The past can inform. The past can give us a way and a path that will help us lead us in the right direction. But my past can be irrelevant if it's not informing my present and helping me represent truth in a positive way. I cannot be intoxicated and consumed with something that was. I better be worried about what is. How am I presenting it today? I can't glory in some kind of past if I'm not presently making the way attractive to others. If I'm not making that happen now, the past, just like a 1993 championship, is irrelevant to a 2026 tournament. The team may not even be in there to play because they didn't make it. The past didn't matter. Again, and I thought about, someone may have grown up very differently from me, but if that person is a mover and shaker for the Lord, and they're moving mountains for the Lord, I may need to take a moment and reflect. I may need to say, hey, what can I learn? And I say, praise God that person is, or those people are. Because I say, God, please help me. Because I think about this thought comes to me. If what I say I have is best, people are going to evaluate my life to see if they find that to be true. Doesn't matter about what I've had. Doesn't matter about what was. Doesn't matter about what I experienced, because they were never there. They only know what they see today. God, please help me live in the present and keep me from being intoxicated with a focus on something that was, because it may not help me if I can't live in the present moment. That verse from Revelation reads specifically these two words, made drunk. And I know there's a very specific way that God has shed light and people use that, but to take that concept, what could intoxicate anybody? It could vary per person. What can they become hung up on or intoxicated with that derails their focus from the path that God could lead them down? Drunkenness implies deception. It implies impaired judgment. It implies an inability to see reality as it truly is. When someone is drunk or someone is intoxicated on something, they are often oblivious to their real situation. They are not aware. And I thought, I don't want to be in a state of being unaware. I don't want to live my life, focused on something that may have been or that could be, focused on only hypothesizing. Help me live in the present with a present reality of how I am. What is my personal situation with God? What is my personal relationship like? And how is it informing my today? How does it help me be an encouragement to someone today? A person who's spiritually, quote unquote, drunk on, and I'm using this specifically because the thought that came to me was thinking about people who can become intoxicated with, God forbid, the past. The past can inform our present. It can even help us make better decisions for our future. But even the Bible addresses you can't live. You must move forward, don't you? You know what? When I think about someone who's spiritually drunk with or intoxicated with their past experiences could live in these situations. Everything was wonderful back then. Well, is it now? What does it matter? What does it matter if it was all wonderful back then? Because guess when we live? Now. You can't change things. You can't. I think about, my mom had this extremely rare form of cancer when she was treated in Winston. I asked one of the nurses, I was like, do you see her cancer? Because we were gathering, it was extremely rare. And I said, do you see her cancer much? And he said, no. And they see a lot. They had constant running machines. It was a very different reality when we went there than when we went to just Little Watauga. Very different reality. And she got what she needed. But I can't spin my wheels. What if we'd had her leg checked sooner? I can't go back and change that, right? Well, I can't go back and make my past that may have been great and gloriful my present. I got to live with what I got now. Reveling in that thought, everything was wonderful back then. Okay, well, how is it now, Danny? How are you influencing people in your present? How are you impacting people's lives to try and encourage them that this relationship with God is the best thing they could ever accept? How is it now? Someone could become intoxicated with the thought, nothing needs to change. Well, do present situations and circumstances really justify me having that attitude? Is there anything about me that God would change? Doesn't matter. Teaching almost 30 years ago, do you know what I use? Some the little ones back here, you probably ain't never heard of this. Girls, when I started teaching, I used something called overhead projector. Do you know what that is? They don't have a clue. But I had what I call teacher arm. The blue vis-a-vis marker would run down my arm because I would plop my arm on it to write because it projected things up on a screen that came down from my wall. And I would erase, and you couldn't help it. You had teacher arm. It'd be right here. You could leave and go somewhere, and people could tell you were a teacher because you had overhead projector arm. Okay? Do you think I'm using that now? Times have changed. The present reality, the projector is irrelevant. That is completely irrelevant to my job. You will not walk through a classroom and find it. There's much more advanced technology that allows me to do the same thing, and guess what I leave without? Teacher arm. So to take the attitude, nothing needs to change, I don't mean God's truths or doctrine. I'm not talking about stuff like that. I'm talking about me and my personal situation with Christ. Nothing needs to change. Does my present reality justify that attitude? Because listen, I don't have a problem. If I look at my life and I say, okay, are you really accomplishing what you would hope to be accomplishing? And if the answer isn't yes, then it's okay for me to ask myself, what needs to change? Am I living a present reality? I can't be intoxicated with things that may have worked in the past. I can't be stuck in the past because it may not be informing my present reality. This one, people who think about, especially if when I think about on the job. Have you ever met someone on the job who's done the job forever and they can't stand anyone to question them and their methods? They take personal offense to it. Oh, I've done this 35 years. Well, it doesn't mean you may not can improve. You can always get better at something. I don't care how old we are. So to take the attitude, anyone who questions me is a problem. Well, what if I need to reevaluate myself? This is for me. I might be happy with many things or certain situations in my life, but it's okay for me to reevaluate. Do I need to reevaluate my approach? Do I need to make changes in my present to better impact people that I encounter? Is there something about me or my attitude or my way? This, and I try to be very self-reflective, but to think about God, how can you best use me in the present? Doesn't matter what things were 15 years ago, does it? That time has come and gone. I might can learn from it. I might can apply certain things from it, but if it's not informing my present well, then maybe I need to reevaluate. And to question that is not necessarily wrong. And for someone else to question me or say, hey, have you thought about this? I don't know if you've ever noticed on occasion you meet people in your life. And if you've ever met, people will sometimes share, but it's very evident they're not open to your feedback. They're just talking. They're not interested and they don't ask anything. They don't ever even implore you. And not that they need to implore me. I'm just saying, if you're ever in a situation, sometimes when I sent my reflections, again, I had a very brief, quick, it was a very fast exchange even, but it was informative and helpful to me with that minister because I just sent my reflection. They had a quick reply. It was very, very fast, but it informed me, it changed the trajectory of what I had thought my lesson would be for today. In that brief interaction, sometimes reevaluating and looking and saying, is this what it needs to be? Is not a bad thing. But if all I had done is set in my mind, well, I think it needs to be this, but I'm not open to feedback, or I'm not open to God saying, okay, Danny, maybe you need to change it. And then I could miss out on how I'm supposed to be doing something. Maybe I need to reevaluate myself, my approach, and make changes in my present to better impact people that are around me. People can take the attitude, or God forbid, become intoxicated with the notion, I was blessed to experience my past, therefore I must be right. You know what? To every season there is what? A time and a purpose. There are seasons in our life. This morning there was a joke made about this side of the room because of the AC, because that's a season of time people enter that didn't apply 20 years ago. And that's just the physical nature of a human being. To every season, times change. Ecclesiastes 3:1, to everything there is a season and a time to every purpose under the heaven. There was a time in my life I used overhead projectors. Does anybody remember transparencies? Going to the copy machine, you'd put the copy on there, it'd run it through, and I thought we were something, man. 20-some years ago, I thought this was something. I could put a worksheet on there, and the machines became advanced enough in our school that you could put acetate in the copy bypass, and he would shoot it through and copy it, and I could put that on my overhead projector, and it matched what my kids were writing. Now that's a joke. You pull it up on the screen or you put it under a document camera. So much time is saved because of advancements in technology. Do I need to go to the copy machine and waste my time putting acetate in it and making transparencies? No, that season of time is gone. I can still accomplish the same thing. I just accomplish it differently in my present reality. We are reminded to everything there is a season. What if I'm in a new season of life? That means God wants me to ask and reevaluate the direction of my life. Or it asks me to reevaluate my approach to my life, my approach to others, and how I want to represent his truth. God can guide me and direct me to every season. There is a purpose. He will give me what I need for this present time. I can't become intoxicated with a past that may have felt successful. You can't become intoxicated with in my job. I can't become, if I went to a doctor and they said, yes, we have a new procedure. It will require a 2-inch incision, but I like to do it the old-fashioned way. I'm going to cut you from shoulder to rib. Thank you for your time, sir. I don't care if that worked in the past. What do I want him to use? Present technology. You're accomplishing the same good, but you're going to do it in the time that it fits. And I feel like God can maybe make me reevaluate my life. What is present? What can I do now in the present to make it fit and to work? Someone can become intoxicated with the saying, and this can just happen. As I age in my career, I get it. I've always seen things done this way. And so there are some methods that are tried and true, and nothing wrong with that. But some scenarios were only appropriate for a specific time of life. Think about us as we age. Are you now entering a scenario of life where certain things are appropriate for you that may not have been appropriate 20 years ago? Of course. That's called aging. That's called changes. If we admit that we're aging and that we need these changes, I don't pretend I don't need reading glasses. Now, can you imagine if I couldn't accept I was getting older and that reading glasses helped me and I'm walking around like this? How are you doing? What a buffoon. That's ridiculous. Just admit I'm in a different season of life. Well, what if God's trying to say, hello, I appreciate, Danny, that you appreciate some things, but you're in a new season of time. Because I can tell you as a teacher, I deal with a very different population of student than I did 26 years ago, 20-something years ago. Some methods are tried and true. I've had to make changes in my profession to match the changing times in which I've lived while teaching. No, change does not equate compromise. I think sometimes people can get the notion if you say the word change, oh, you mean compromise. No. I can still teach concepts with new technology. Guess what didn't change? The answer. Working that problem 26 years ago, I get the same answer 26 years later, but the way I get it might change. That's changing with the present time and the situation. You can refuse to update your phones or your personal devices, but what happens as you refuse to update them? They become useless. I don't want to be useless for Christ. If I have an attitude of refusal, an intoxication, and a fixation only how things used to be or were or this or that or becoming consumed with my past, what if I'm rendered useless in the present? Nothing good coming from that. The Bible very clearly instructs us to be two things. You'll know them: sober and vigilant, not to be intoxicated. And I know that verse that I started with was used in some regards, very differently. Now, I liked the approach that this person used to making it very relevant today about the concept of drunkenness and how that applied to people who get wrapped up in false systems. But I kind of borrowed from that, thinking about, well, how can, for me, be careful what I could become intoxicated with. In 1 Peter 5 and 8, 1 Peter 5 and 8. I need to hurry, I apologize. Be sober, be vigilant, because your adversary, the devil, as a roaring lion, walketh about, seeking whom he may devour. And we get a vision for that. We know the devil wants to devour people, and we think, oh, yeah, he'll get them wrapped up in this. He'll get them believing this. What if he just gets me stuck? You can have a brand new car, but if you're stuck in the mud, where are you going? Nowhere. I can have an experience, but if I'm allowing myself to get stuck and intoxicated with how things used to be or the way things were or this or that, then I'm not being sober and vigilant. I'm going to let that, if not for, God forbid, I let my spiritual experience be devoured and consumed by being stuck. I need to be sober and vigilant. In 1 Thessalonians 5 and 6, therefore let us not sleep as do others, but let us watch and be sober. The devil can lull us to sleep. If somebody only gloried in, if a coach only gloried in one past season and how wonderful it was and how successful it was, and he just constantly tried to recreate that season, is he always going to be successful? No. Players move on. Do you think every group of kids he would get to coach are going to be the same? No. He's got to work with who he's got. He's got to work with his situation. The word vigilant can mean to be watchful, alert, awake, and on guard against danger or deception. Someone who's drunk or intoxicated, on whatever it is, they can't be those things, can they? Well, neither can someone who's intoxicated on their past. They can't be watchful, alert, or awake, nor can they be on guard for the changes that God may try to witness to their life. What if he says, okay, Danny, I appreciate that you want to live this way, but maybe you need to make this change in your life, or maybe you need to do this. If I'm not watchful, alert, awake, and on guard, I can shun out the possibilities that God could present to me because I'm so intoxicated on being happy with how things are that I make myself unaware. Don't be spiritually asleep. Someone spiritually asleep will not be attuned to the exciting changes that God can make in his or her life. Change does not always equal compromise. I have changed. I'm sure those of you who work in medicine, I would assume in your years of doing this, you've changed how you do some of your procedures. To stay stuck in that, you're going to miss out on your job. You may be fired because you're unwilling to change and do what is expected. It has a repercussion. Well, why do I think it wouldn't have a repercussion spiritually? If I can't change my ways. And when I say change my ways, it doesn't mean I was doing something sinful. It may be that, hey, I'm glad this worked 25 years ago, but you live in 2026. My truth hasn't changed, but buddy, your people have changed. People and who you deal with have changed. Those of you with family, has your family changed since you had them as children? I mean, duh. That's called normal. If it didn't change, it would be significantly unhealthy, right? They can't have a constant dependence on parents. That's terribly unhealthy. People who need to be sober and watchful need to pay attention to what's happening around them. Someone who's intoxicated will be very unaware of their surroundings. You can meet people who may be nice and all, but they're very clueless, very oblivious. They're intoxicated with maybe the way they think they are is great. Maybe they think things are fine. I've always lived this. I've always known this, blah, blah, blah. Well, that's great, but how's it affecting you today? Because there may be someone who's never had it doing way better than me, and I better be watching. Well, how's God using that person? I can't rest on my laurels, as they say. I got to move forward. I can't be drunk and unaware because I'm intoxicated with a fixation on what I think I may have had or what I think I may have known. They may be reliant on past experiences so much so that they fail to see their present circumstances are not successful. And I don't want to be wrapped up in that because that would be embarrassing for me. I can't become so wrapped up in the past I don't realize that my present isn't moving along very well. There could be all kinds of proof around me that my past revelations and my fixation on it are stealing from present opportunities to make a difference in the name of Christ. Well, I've never seen this done. Because 30 years ago, maybe it wasn't needed. Maybe 30 years ago, times were just, my car is a rarity. You know why? I insert a key in an ignition and turn it. That's becoming very rare. What do most people do now? They push a button. Mine happens to need a key. Do you need to go out to your push button start and try to shove a key in it because 30 years ago you needed a key? No, you're a moron. I mean, I'm just being very frank. You're a moron. But I don't want to be a moron spiritually. God's saying, hey, I'm glad you've had a past, buddy, but you better start living in the present because what's it doing for you? God help me. I can be thankful for past successes or past experiences, upbringings, teachings, exposures, whatever the case is, and everybody can have that in their own way. It doesn't have to be the same as mine. But I got to live in the present. I need to be aware of temptations, deceptions, and attacks from the devil. There is much I can learn from a minister, from teachings, from preachings, from experiences from the past or experience of watching others. But they may not always be relevant to a present reality. Those things that I've seen and experienced may not always be informative to a present reality, and I need an up-to-date experience. I need to ask the Lord, how do I face today's realities? I have to operate in the current times in which God has planted us to work. You think about ministers and things you've heard for many years. Can you imagine a minister 50 years ago had no idea a cell phone would exist? But guess what they do? And guess what? They can be extremely useful. So we live in a present reality that they wouldn't have known and wouldn't have known how to deal with or address back then. I got to live in my reality. I would hate to fall to the temptation and deception of the enemy to not recognize that I simply do not live and operate in the same period as a past brother and sister so-and-so. God's message hasn't changed, but times and realities have changed tremendously. I must be a present person to be able to represent a present gospel for a present generation, if that makes sense. I must be a present person to represent a present gospel for a present generation. Assuming that something from the past is always going to be perfect may not be true because it was acceptable in the time that it was used, because that's what was needed for that time. I'm not advocating, I feel like I hope I don't have to reiterate this because it's not what I mean, but just in case, I'm not advocating compromise or whatever. But I cannot rely on a past and past successes that are long gone. I have to stay prepared and discerning. An intoxicated person, can they exercise healthy discernment? Absolutely not. They cannot exercise healthy discernment. I can miss opportunities to discern what I need to do now if I'm drunk on my past and focused on what used to be. I could become so intoxicated with that I have no present discernment. The ability to say, well, right now, God may be saying and showing me this is an opportunity that wouldn't have existed 30 years ago because it was a different time. But what can I do now to make this present reality show the present generation that serving Christ is the best way to go, the happiest life? I must deal with present realities, and I have to seek God daily for a present guidance because I don't want to compromise either. I just want to do what's right. We are instructed, if we're going to be sober and vigilant, we keep our mind clear and focused. An intoxicated mind is clouded, isn't it? Thankfully, I've never personally experienced it, but I know from people, their mind is so clouded. Often it's so clouded they don't remember the next day sometimes, do they? What they've done or what they've said. You know what? The devil knows that he can't get some people to forsake what they believe. He can't get them to just walk away from God. What if he can get them stuck in the mud? What if he can get you stuck in the mud of the past? Or stuck in the mud of what you can't move beyond the fact that it's okay that you live in a present generation, not one from 40 years ago. I'm not saying compromise truth or stand. I'm not talking about stuff like that. But we deal with our present reality. God's truth is as relevant today as it was back then. But back then, again, use your job. Have your jobs evolved over time? Yeah, you don't have to do them the same way it was always done before because it doesn't make sense. You can't get stuck in the mud. When people move from one job to the next, I use this as an analogy, you can stay in the same profession. The same truths about your profession may follow you from one employer to the next. But will you do everything the exact same at your new place of employment? Not always, because they have their own standards and their own methodology. But do the fundamental truths of your job stay true? When my mom had radiation therapy was the same in Watauga and Winston, except for the way it was administered. They had different technology. Radiation killed cancer in Watauga, but it killed it differently in Winston-Salem, Forsyth, because they had more advanced technology. Same fundamental truth, but a very different administration, wasn't it? Because of what they had available. They had something more up to date in Winston, which is where we ended up taking my mom. They have to be clear and focused on the requirements of your present job, or you can cause yourself a lot of heartache and trouble, can't you? You can cause yourself to not be successful at a new job because you're too stuck in the past. I can't be drunk or intoxicated with past experiences or past successes. They interfere with my present reality. It keeps me from moving forward. Real quick, some common traits of a person who is intoxicated. Now, thankfully for myself, it doesn't matter anyway. These are apparently commonly known traits of someone who would be intoxicated. Impaired judgment. They make poor decisions, but what do they think? They think they're making a good decision, don't they? They're just sold on it. They develop a false sense of reality, a false sense of security, in a belief that their lives are just fine spiritually, but all the while, everyone around them can tell things are not good. You think about someone intoxicated by something that's hindering their spiritual progress. They think everything's just fine, but they're intoxicated. They took a drink of something. In many cases, that verse is used about false religion. I get it. You know what? I could be standing up here. I've been raised in this. I want to try and stay and live as I should. But I can get fixated and intoxicated by something that stops my progress just as much if I'm not careful. And I get a false sense of security in a belief that everything's just fine, but all the while, everybody around me can tell, I don't think things are progressing with him as they should be. I could glory in the past, but fail to realize that my present situation isn't really being as productive as I want it to be. God forbid. God help me. I pray I don't fall prey to that intoxication or drunkenness. People who are intoxicated are unable to accurately evaluate their circumstances. Can they evaluate dangers? Can people who are intoxicated accurately evaluate a potential danger in front of them? A person drunk on whatever it is the devil would want them to fixate on cannot truly judge their present circumstances in light of Christ. They fail to admit, maybe, I better be careful here. Someone who's intoxicated literally can't do that. Well, I don't want to be intoxicated by anything that could cause me trouble either. In Philippians 3:13 and 14, brethren, I count not myself to have apprehended, but this one thing I do, forgetting those things which are behind and reaching forth unto those things which are before. What does God have ahead if time should last? What does God have for me today? The past is great. The past has a place. The past can be the best teacher. But what do I need to be doing in my present reality for people to encourage them? I press toward the mark for the prize of the high calling of God in Christ Jesus. People who are intoxicated have a very false sense of confidence. They think they Superman, don't they? Or something like that. They may become unusually bold or self-assured. And a drunk person will attempt things that if they were in their right mind, thinking rationally, they would never attempt. You know, you think about people who can become intoxicated, spiritually speaking, on something. They will boldly proclaim all is well. But does my life speak that? Does my life speak to others all is well? In reality, is my experience up to date and as Christ would have it be? You pray for me. I just want to be what I should be for him in whatever present situation I find myself. People who are intoxicated can say I'm fine even when they're actually what? Struggling, when they're really having a hard time. And there's all kinds of, there's other things. Distorted perception. People who are intoxicated, they have a false sense of reality. Reality is totally altered in their minds. They can misinterpret warnings as attacks or criticism. I hope people have had limited and hopefully no experience with this, but if you've ever seen someone try to talk to someone who's intoxicated, do they accomplish much? Sometimes they don't. Because I'm fine. I mean, they are not open-minded to hearing that they're possibly, they don't take a warning very well. And the same can be true when someone becomes intoxicated with whatever it is the devil's had them fixate on. And again, it may not be that they're sinning or doing wrong, but he's got them stuck in the mud. The drunkard proclaims, "I'm fine, leave me alone." But the individual warning them is only doing so out of love and concern. They're not really trying to threaten them, but a drunkard's false sense of security was threatened when the true reality of their situation was presented to them. What if God tries to show me the true reality of my present situation? And the devil tells me, "Oh, it's just a threat. It's just there's nothing wrong." What if God's saying, "Look, there's more, Danny. There's different, Danny. Be open to what I'll show you, Danny." Emotional exaggeration. People who are intoxicated can heighten their emotions, can't they? People who can be extremely sad, they laugh, they're overly loud, they celebrate, they become very sentimental over things that would normally never produce those reactions. Emotions are no longer governed by sound judgment. They proclaim, "There's nothing wrong with me." They may even think that they are happy and blessed in that situation. But the devil can do the same thing to people. They get so intoxicated with whatever it is that he's got them focused on, they think everything's fine. They think there's nothing wrong with me. And it's sad because maybe everybody around them can tell that God's blessings are not on their lives, spiritually speaking. The people may be successful even in terms of the world, but how up to date is and I'll make it personal to me, how up to date is my experience with Christ? How well am I representing truth to others? How well is my present situation? The past is becoming quickly irrelevant if I can't be successful in my present, if I'm not letting it help me and help me continue on. In Galatians 6:3, "For if a man think himself to be something when he is nothing, he deceiveth" who? Himself. And that's the devil wants there to be deception. It may not come. He may not try to bring deception to me through something false or through something out there or through something that would make me stray from what I've always known in some degree. But what if he can get me stuck, unwilling to say, "Lord, show me now. Show me what I need to be now." The sobering reality is that drunken people rarely seek help because sadly, what do they believe? They believe they don't need it. Well, what if I need help and God's trying to show me? That's got to be the devil putting doubt in my mind. I've always known this, or I've always known that, or I've experienced this. What if God's trying to say, "Danny, that was great in its time, but you got to live right now. You got to be what you need to be for me right now." People who are intoxicated or prone to that temptation, they often feel happiest just before they experiences the consequences of their condition. If you've ever seen people who get on that, they're like almost on a high. And then when they wake up to reality, what happens? They're devastated. They're hurt. They start the apologies. They feel terrible. The saddest thing is the consequences of a drunkenness that the devil would love to put on spiritually could equate to missed opportunities to help other people. It could equate to missed opportunities to turn people to God's truth. Instead, I turn them off to truth because of my inability to operate in my present circumstances. I just want God to help me in my personal life to be what I need to be if I wake up today, if I continue today, if I wake up tomorrow. And I know He'll be faithful. Spiritual sobriety requires humility, openness to correction, continual return to God's word. It is so important. The person who continually asks, "Lord, search me, show me if I am deceived," is far less likely to become intoxicated by anything that prevents them from showing others the truth. Again, I did not take that verse nowhere near in many regards the same vein that minister, that dear minister did. But the way he presented the concept of drunkenness stuck with me. And it made me think about there are a lot of things the devil can use to intoxicate us, and it doesn't involve anything sinful. If not careful, I'll become self-centered. I think I got it all figured out. Better come to Brother Danny because I know, oh please, I'm still learning so much, it's pitiful. But again, I think this thought struck me. There are people who have, when you go to camp meetings and stuff, it is kind of rewarding because you meet people with very different backgrounds and pasts, don't you? But some of them are really being used by the Lord. And I say, Lord, help me. We'll give it to Brother Mark.
Ministers also have to keep up with the times. I'm thankful that we have ministers that God puts in there for us that can say, be careful of yourself for use. Be careful of seeing the way this person does. Be careful. And I'm thankful that even though we have to live in the times, I'm thankful that God gives light to ministers and can help us fight the devil in those ways. Because it's not this, as David was saying, as it was when I was a kid. Different clothing, different places to go, different, it's just happened, it all comes different. And I'm thankful that through all of the difference, God still takes care of our soul in the present.
Amen. Amen. Very good lesson this morning. Things we can take to heart. And one thing about it, Jesus is always the answer. Jesus is always the answer. And we need to really pray and for one another and make good use of our time in this present time. Whatever we can do to win souls and live a life that's pleasing before God. It's good. Thank the Lord for the good lesson. We'll take just a little bit of a break and then we'll move on with the service here shortly, Lord willing.